feel like Kobe in the fourth quarter.
This is the Dane Moore NBA podcast. We're brought to you by Prize Picks, coming at you Friday morning. It's January 10th after the Wolves win in Orlando on Thursday night, their third win in a row, as they start kind of sort of trending back in the right direction at an important time. We're definitely going to get into that game, Ants dunk, all that. But the first segment of this episode we kind of pre-planned because we want to get to this stuff in advance of the trade deadline. Is we're going to update my Wolves salary cap sheet, talk about the Wolves cap situation, sort of entering the trade deadline, what it looks like now, what it might look like this coming summer, because I think that should probably, having all that information should probably inform us how we should be thinking about the trade deadline. What I'm really saying is really trying to figure out this Julius Randle player option decision that they have. What can they have in addition to him if he opts in, and what more than that can they have if he opts out? To help me talk through the Orlando game and make sure I don't miss anything with this salary cap stuff, I'm joined today by Theige. What's up, Kyle?
This is good timing. All credit to you because you did a ton of work here to get ready for this, and I think a lot of people are going to geek out over seeing the salary cap spreadsheet. Again, so if you're listening to this, you want to actually see it, go to YouTube, click subscribe. But I also want to take a little credit because it was about a week ago when I texted you and I was like, hey, man, we're about a month away from the trade deadline. We should probably get to work. And it kind of feel like the same thing with when Ant was saying they said I fell off. That might have been about our pod last week, about us being like, hey, those are the worst comments he's ever had. And all of a sudden he's scored 100 and some points in 3 games. But yeah, the vibes are good this week. Obviously, they knock off, I think, a good Clippers team. You were there. You covered that game. Kawhi comes back. They knock off a medium-sized Pelicans team, but they did have Zion. And then last night, obviously, they beat the Magic. But you get, I try to keep it sparse, but you get a lot of my texts in-game when I'm frustrated about things, keeping them offline. And a lot of those have been about Julius Randle. That I think I echo a lot of people listening to this. And last night was one of the first nights where I was like, all right, I think I can see it. And that's kind of based off of the stuff you talked about with Chris Hine, about Chris Finch, his comments the other night. And then last night, post-game, Julius, they were like, Finch said, you're a trooper. And Julius was like, I love Finch. And it kind of struck my mind of like, there's a real chance that this isn't a short-term fling. Like that this is maybe a long-term relationship. And if that's the case, how the hell does it look on Excel?
Well, that's a great way to sort of set it up, because we are going to talk about the basketball of that game last night, right? And what it meant for, Rudy played well. I thought all 3 of the bigs played well.
Jalen Clark played well.
Jalen Clark. So I do want to get into the Randle stuff and some of those Finch comments, because how we also understand him as a basketball player and leave our minds open, I think, to your point, to the idea that we might not have properly been understanding what he was when he came in, what he's been, what he could be. But also we know the stuff that's been tough. It's been a tough hang with Julius Randle too. So, what I'm trying to do, and I think what you're trying to do too, is like find an honest interpretation of all of this with all the inputs possible. And a really big one in the Julius Randle situation is just the nature of the Wolves salary cap, the nature of Julius's contract, and the nature of the 2024 NBA's collective bargaining agreement with this whole new second apron environment that we live in. So again, on the YouTube screen, I'm going to try my best for people listening in podcasts to try and talk this through, but there's like a million numbers.
Millennial Larry Kuhn, he's back. This is how you got started in the game, and now Dane has 13 tabs and 9 different colors. But this is awesome, because this is, to me, again, the jumping off point for not only this next 3 weeks, right, but maybe these next 5 years. So I'm just going to sit back and enjoy, and then I'll pipe in when you want. But this is awesome, because this is breaking down the exact, salary cap for the next 5 years.
Again, the goal of what we're trying to figure out here is, what does the path look like if Julius Randle opts into his player option? What does the path look like if he doesn't? That's what I'm trying to figure out here. What we need to do to figure that out is update the Wolves salary cap sheet from this is what it looked like at the beginning of the season. All right, Keita Bates-Diop gets waived. Also, PJ Dozier got waived. So we're changing their numbers. That's now dead money on their salary cap. This is all just, basic trim in the fixings, whatever. Tristan Newton replaced Dacian Nix on a 2-way contract. And then a big one, right, is Rudy Gobert opted out of his player option for next season at $47 million and re-signed this deal that starts at $35 million next season, 35 next season, 36.5 the season after that, 38. So what really changes there when we go from that $47 million number for Rudy down to 35 next season is now you have 12 million more space below the second apron. And that's this cell down here, Kyle, that I kind of tried to make bigger because that's what we're looking at. We're thinking about this as the functional salary cap, right? For this team. They were in the second apron. They're going to be in the second apron this season. The goal is to put together a team that's not on the second apron for next season. So right now, as we update Gobert's number, we see the Wolves for the 25-26 season are about $17.5 million below the second apron. Now, the issue here is you have Julius Randle, who has this player option for $31 million for next season. We have Naz Reid, who has a $15.2 million player option, and Nickeil Alexander-Walker is an unrestricted free agent. So, if we just assume that Julius opts into this player option here, right, and that is the number, then we have this $17.5 million to work with here. It is not going to be possible to bring back both Naz and Nickeil and stay under that 17 million number. Like, if we want to say Naz's starting salary next season on his new deal is going to be 23, I think it's a hard market to figure out exactly, but if we guess it starts at 23, you think that's aggressive?
Slightly. Let's say
like
slightly.
Low? You think it's aggressively low? Or
I think high? I just was looking at who could have money and some of these other. I was thinking more like 480. But again, I'm nitpicking something that you did way more research on.
No. I think that's, and we can even do that. Let's start it at 20. All right. We'll go like as conservative as we can, and then Nickeil, 15. That's like just above the mid level. If you did both of those,
I'd give him Greenland, but he deserves. He's going to play himself into a huge contract because Naz, it's still tough, right? Like I don't always know what Naz's position is. Nickeil Alexander-Walker is he's Alex Caruso. He is a 3-and-D player who's only 26 years old.
Which makes me think like the mid level next year is going to be 14, just for people's perspective here. Like I think he's a lock for that, you know. So I think 15 is pretty conservative. Naz is pretty conservative here at 20. We're still over the second apron here, and that is before even filling out the rest of the roster, right? You gotta be able to put in, a couple more. I just threw a minimum contract in there, and so you're over the second apron just by filling out your roster, even with conservative estimations to both, Naz and Nickeil. So the path that if Randle opts in, it's simple. You get one of the two. You get one of the two of Naz or Nickeil to come back for next season with him. Go ahead. Yeah.
So what you just showed again on YouTube, this is way more beneficial maybe today than listening on Spotify or Apple. But if Julius just opts in and you were to pay Naz and Nickeil, like contract extensions, new contracts, raises, all that stuff, you are once again in the second apron or over the second apron.
Yeah.
And that is bad because, right now they're a second apron team this year, but you really don't want to be a multi-time second apron offender, correct?
And there's even more restrictions in that way from building the roster, not to mention just the tax payments become, ridiculous. Like the Wolves are going to pay the highest tax payment this season in the league. It's just comparatively, yes. And people go, well, what do you mean they can't do it? They can, and they could take hundreds of millions of dollars losses over a couple of years. But we're seeing other franchises that have more track record of making more money, making cuts to stay away from this stuff. Steve Ballmer did it, whatever. You go down the line. It's just, yes, we could play that hypothetical game. But particularly for a team that's close to 500 right now, that's just kind of crazy to be a second apron team 2 years in a row.
In my understanding, as we all figure out this new CBA, is that a second apron situation for 1 year isn't always like the worst, but it's when you start to compound it by doing it multiple years in a row that you really start to find yourself, like you said, there's so many more restrictions now that this is why we're doing this.
And I would even say the idea of like, it's more restrictions, sure, but it's also 2 seasons in a row of restrictions, if that makes sense. Of like 2 seasons in a row where you can't bring back more money in trades, 2 seasons in a row of like only minimum contracts. Those aren't like individual, but it's kind of like death by 1,000 paper cuts, I guess would be my analogy there. So again, for the sake of this activity, we're assuming that to be a hard cap for this team, even if it isn't technically a hard cap. So again, that's the Julius option situation. That's pretty clean. If you can convince one of Nas or Nikhil to resign, you can do that. Not both of them. But let's take Randle out of here, right? Let's say he opts out. He goes elsewhere. You now have $48.5 million below the second apron to work with here. So what you would need to do is like immediately Nikhil put a cap hold on Nikhil's number right here, but it's so low. It's only 8.2. So you still have 40 million to work with to be able to add on top of the 15 you have Nas's player option at and the 8 for Nikhil's cap hold. So you can give them both big raises, right? You can, again, if Randle's out, let's give Nas that 23. That is not a conservative estimation. Let's give Nikhil that 15 again. So if you do that and Randle's out, you got to still do a couple of minimum contracts here, right, to kind of fill things out. But what I'm looking at, and I didn't think about or didn't realize before running through this kind of exercise yesterday, was they could bring Nas back, they could bring Nikhil back, and they could then replace Randle with a full mid-level exception guy, which starts at $14 million a year. Like that's David DiVincenzo a year ago signed for the full mid-level exception. It's like that caliber of player. And now we can look at what that free agent list is. Maybe the market's going to be a little bit weird this summer. Actually, that could be an advantage if it's depressed. But what I'm realizing is it's not Randle and one of Nikhil and Nas, or no Randle and you get both of Nikhil and Nas. It's Nikhil, Nas, and the ability to use the full mid-level exception. Or just having a lot of added space below the second apron that gives you some financial flexibility to maybe it's Nas, Nikhil, mid-level exception, and you got a little bit more wiggle room if you want to make like some sort of trade where you actually take back more money. So those are pretty different paths. And I was just always kind of thinking about it as Nas and Nikhil versus Randle and one of the two. There's more juice on the back end of that Randle opts outside in their ability to use that mid-level exception. I mean, I was just kind of looking at some names. What is Dorian Finney-Smith going to sign for next season? Probably the mid-level exception. Trey Lyles, if we're talking about bigs. Nicholas Batum, I don't know if he's going to retire. What about John Collins? Like, is he a mid-level guy? There's a bunch of guards: Malcolm Brogdon, Lonzo Ball, Dennis Schroeder, Trey Jones, Davion Mitchell, Trey Mann, Luke Kennard, Gary Trent Jr. Like, I don't think any of those guys are getting more than the mid-level. You could even, with that 14, you could split it up into 2. You could grab 2 of those guys for 7 each and kind of use that whole, break that gift card in half. There's just some optionality, and I don't know, man. I think this summer, just from an economic reality standpoint, if you are a free agent, it might be hard to be getting deals for like well over the mid-level. Another name I like on there, I've always kind of liked Miles Turner. I think he's probably more than a mid-level guy. I bet you he signs kind of like those Nas numbers we're talking about, around 20 or 25. But we started seeing weird stuff last summer in the market where a team just runs out of spending capital there. So guys go to teams for the mid-level, or a lot less. I mean, obviously Tyus Jones was the really screaming example of that. Teams just ran out of like stuff to be able to offer him, so he had to take the minimum. I wouldn't be surprised if there's like some sort of situation this summer where a guy that you would think is a $25+ million a year player ends up signing somewhere for the mid-level. And the Wolves, point being is the Wolves can have a net of being able to catch that player if they fall through. And it's a pretty nice net. Anthony Edwards is on this team. The Wolves have been, winning for a while. They might actually be able to attract someone. So I don't know who the free agent is or what exactly it looks like, but the way I'm now looking at the Julius Randle player option situation is if he opts out, you could re-sign Naz Reid, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and a real meaningful free agent with the mid-level exception. And that's a pretty big pot, and thus a costly opportunity cost of Randle opting into that player option if he does, because if that happens, all you can do is bring back Reed or Alexander Walker. How much of that was confusing or needs clarification?
Nothing. I geeked out over that. Also, too, can we just, as we're throwing bigs into our shopping spree, maybe Larry Nance Jr.? I know he doesn't space the floor, but just a guy I always have liked. But the Miles Turner one makes so much sense because, again, you're talking
light. Yeah,
you're talking about salary cap and second apron and all this stuff. I'm thinking of, okay, well, if you lose Julius, the one thing that's pretty common sense is like you are very thin, right? And that's before you even try to dissect are any of the young pups, the Garzas, the Leonard Millers, Josh Myers, are any of those guys actually going to see minutes? Are they fill-ins for what Julius does? I don't know. But I think this is fascinating because the free agent list that you sent me, I don't know, was it from Spot Tracker? I mean, it's got some fun names on there, and it's also got some Bobby Portis's, which is how over the hill are they? But the Tyus thing made me think too. And again, as we're doing this on Friday, I know there's some possible arbitration updates coming soon. If this team has the right ownership and the right front office and the star player, I think they could go get one of those guys, like you said, just having the net ready to land someone that doesn't find the market value they want elsewhere. And you know what? Bleep it. I'm going to go try to win a ring with Anthony Edwards, which I know sounds crazy.
Yeah, it could be 1 year too, or get a player option in your second. It's just I'm here for a minute. It's like Bruce Brown did or whatever when he went to the Pacers, right? Sorry, but
no, I didn't know.
Could
I just
be like that. Yeah,
Dorian Finney-Smith is another one. That's a guy who I think people would have loved to swap Jaden for, and it's well, what if you just had them both? Now you're really good defensively, and you get a little more increase from three. So I know you took the spreadsheet down, but just in general, I was going to ask you this. This has nothing to do with the spreadsheet, but when you're doing this exercise, did you find it I get? I'm not trying to explain the trade. I get why they maybe traded Carl.
Yeah, it's unwrapping more of the layers of what this financial flexibility is. When that's what it was pitched, right? When we talk to the people with the Wolves, trying to understand the motivation behind the Cat trade was obviously really liking DiVincenzo, believing that that Randle doesn't give them a step back. You get the draft pick, and then you get future financial flexibility, where paths to being under the second apron in years down the line, which would have been a lot harder to do if Cat was still on this team. And there's going to be little Easter eggs of that along the way. And, I guess we could forecast further. Some of it has to just play out, but this is an Easter egg, is a real, meaningful full mid-level exception path that you can go down, because what allows them to be able to do that is by Randle's player option not being picked up, they dip all the way below the luxury tax for a minute there. So you kind of got an order of operations it. Randle opts out. You leave Nickeil's cap hold sitting there. You leave Naz's player option sitting there at 15 and 8. Then you go, while you're under the luxury tax line, sign that mid-level exception guy, sign your Dorian Finney-Smith, like you said, whatever, to his contract, then give Nickeil his raise, then give Naz his raise, and you still got, you can do all that by staying under the second apron. I will note there's a little bit of a risk that Naz and Nickeil can just bounce,
Yep. I was just saying, I had some more thoughts on that as well, but we're about 19 minutes in, and I kind of want to rehydrate, so.
All right. Yes, we have a new sponsor that I am really excited about. It is Watermelon Water. They are going to be with us for the rest of the season, and over the next few months, I look forward to telling you about all the benefits of Watermelon Water. But I think Got one right here. Woo. But I think the very first thing I want to mention is the taste. And Kyle, I know you got some of these too. It literally tastes like biting into a watermelon. You know, you take a sip and immediately I'm like, oh yeah, I'm like sitting outside. It's 4th of July and I'm eating watermelon. It is, a lot of things are flavored to taste like something. This tastes actually like I am, eating and consuming the fruit. And that's because it's cold pressed watermelon juice. I've really been loving it. It's kind of in the same way of like, if you keep coconut water around the house, it's a real like electrolyte boost, hydrator. I know you've been having them too, Kyle. What have your thoughts be? And then I can let people know where they can get them from.
We've been really lucky to partner with a lot of cool companies. I think that says more about the people that listen to the show than does what you or I, but this is up there with one of the best ones we've ever partnered with. It's absolutely delicious. There's also some like strawberry lemonade ones, like as you show on the screen right now. No added sugar. It's like all natural sugar from fruit. And it's just, if you're into the gym or you're going to play basketball Saturday mornings, you just need a way to like rehydrate, which is something we should all be doing because not everyone loves water, as my wife always reminds me. This is a great alternative. I actually brought some of these to my HOA board meeting the other night. It was just me and Bobby, but he thought it was great too. So my neighbors are all in on this. It's absolutely delicious. It's really like it's packaged well, and it's a great thing to just throw in your gym bag or just have around the house. Drink it while you're working or whatever. But it's not only like good for you, but it is. I'm telling you, man, I need more. Like it is so delicious, and there's other flavors, and I'm just a huge fan of what they're doing at Watermelon.
So the question then becomes, if you're wanting to try these, where do you get them? And the answer is, they're in both Targets and Whole Foods. So it can be as simple as when you're, and I know a lot of people here do grocery shopping at Target in Minnesota. You can just go find it there again. If you look up on the screen, you can see what the packaging looks like here. It is watermelon water, spelled WTRMLN. WTR, so no vowels in there. But when you're at Target, you're at Whole Foods, look at this image right here, WTR MLN WTR, and throw it in your cart. Same thing at Whole Foods. If you're there, do that. But because they're at Target and because they're at Whole Foods, you can just, if you get your groceries delivered, or even if you don't, it's really easy. Whole Foods is connected through Amazon. Try it out. WTR MLN WTR. And throw it into your cart, try one, see what it's like. That's not an expensive, one-time buy. And if it ends up being something you love, maybe, we found a customer for them. But again, just Amazon at Whole Foods, Instacart, for Target. This is, I think this is a great product. We're really excited, to have them, to be partners with them going forward. Just a quick note to listeners, and Kyle and I are kind of planning for 2025. And while we're full the next couple of months on ads, what happened to us last season as the playoffs came, more people wanted to advertise during the playoffs, and we just have a lot of stuff going on, or at that time, right? So we would like, if you're thinking about wanting to advertise for this spring or for the playoffs, we do have a couple spots open. If you would like to do that, just reach out to us. You can do that by emailing us at DaneMooreProductions@gmail.com. Again, we're looking forward to the spring, summer, and would be very interested in hearing about your brand if you would like to partner.
If Prize Picks opts out, like Julius Randle, then we could go get like a donut shop, and like I'm wearing Doer jeans right now. I'm not going to stand up on screen, but I got Doer jeans on underneath this little get up. Yeah, no, I echo everything you said. I know the Wolves beat the Magic last night, but can we maybe just go like a little further on that Randall stuff? Maybe more just conversation-wise now?
Yeah.
Just because some of your notes were still very intriguing to me of, okay, I think the mid-level exception thing was something that no one had thought of. Like, I hadn't thought of it. Like, I just thought it was pretty straightforward. So if Julius did opt out the morning after I'm talking about, I'm actually kind of a fan of his.
Yeah.
And you can go sign Nikhil and you can sign Nas. Just off the top of your head, what do you think would be the position you would attack? Like, you'd have to go find a new stretch big, right?
Yeah, I think that's where my head went first. So when I was kind of looking at it here, I was like, all right, so in the Randall opts out isn't on the team situation, just kind of looking at the roster, you're still thin at point guard, but Rob Dillingham is, going to be playing next season or taking on certainly a bigger role than he has
For
now.
sure.
So, that kind of like made me think twice about a real, like a Malcolm Brogdon or Alonzo Ball or Dennis Schroeder, because Mike Conley is under contract next season too. It feels like a thin position, but also one that they don't really need to get a 25, 30 minute a night guy to fill in there. So I kind of crossed that one off, or lightly crossed it off. Wing, that felt like one that doesn't make sense for them to invest limited resources in. You got Ant, Naw in this scenario. You got Dante under contract for 3 more seasons. Even Terrence Shannon Jr., I think, is somebody you want to consider being in the wing rotation next season. Then I kind of went like forward, which is like small forward / power forward, right? That's where you get really thin without Randle. Nas is a forward for you. Jaden McDaniels would be a forward for you. And Josh Minot would be a forward for you. You would, might not need to be, you could finesse that a little bit. You don't need a lot more there, but that seems like the most open position to add something to. That's where my head went, because with the bigs, you'd have Gobert, Nas, Garza, Leonard Miller. It just seems like forward would be the position, and that's why Dorian Finney-Smith just popped off the list. He is 32. Like, you want to give him a 4-year mid-level? I don't know, but my head went there. Trey Lyles, John Collins, those types of guys.
The only reason I want to keep going into this is because, and tell me if you disagree, but from a basketball for dummies standpoint, it really seems like they traded Carl at the 5 minutes before midnight, and they replaced him with just another power forward, right? Like they kind of just brought back a different type of player, but tried to peg him into the same role. Mm-hmm. Whereas if Julius were to opt out this summer, or was moved at the deadline for no bringing back salary long term, and you sign Nas and Nikhil, I think this path also gives you more flexibility to just build a more common sense roster. Because in the notes you sent me, it's like Jaden could play more at the 4. And it's like, that actually has been kind of, if we're talking about basketball now, beneficial, I think. Like, Jaden has more 8 rebound games this year, I think, than he did all of last year, and they played 35 games. Like, maybe.
And if he's at the 4, he's not as much of a problem as a shooter.
Right. So then you go get a more, guess who's a free agent next year? Our Malik Beasley. So you're like, you can go find more guys like that. So I just think it's a very interesting situation, which then kind of pivots to, Dane just gave you essentially a fork in the road moment of, if Julius stays, very likely you only keep one of Nikhil and Nas. 2 guys that I'm at this point thinking are like foundational pieces. Like, in my brain, I know contract-wise this doesn't agree, but I think of them on the Jaden McDaniels core foundation building thing. So if you want to keep both of them, very unlikely with Julius. If Julius opts out, you keep them both. But the trade deadline is 3 weeks from now. And I don't know if there's really anything else we can talk about this. It's a reminder to me that on February 6th, the trade deadline, there's this real fork in the road moment for the franchise, because if you don't trade Julius, which I'm at the point now where I'm like, I don't think they're going to, they're kind of humming, like, right. They don't believe in the Kyle Theige gap year, then you do open yourself up to, between what Tim Conley could opt in or opt out of, what Julius Randle could opt in or opt, a very chaotic summer. You know what I mean? Just on multiple fronts. And also, too, like, we're just kind of assuming that Nas and Nikhil would stay if the funds are here. And I would imagine that they both have enjoyed their time here. Chris Finch kind of said,
I would career. Too, but it's still unrestricted free agency. It's
right.
Like, they,
like, I don't know what the Spurs books are, but I still always think both of those guys, Nikhil and Nas, those are just perfect players to play next to Wemby.
I was texting somebody about Nikhil's number, and they're like, I'm not even sure he's going to get the full mid-level. The market's going to be so, and I'm like, hold on. No. Like, you're not telling me, like, the Oklahoma City Thunder aren't shelling out the full mid-level exception for Nickeil Alexander-Walker? Would he not be fucking perfect on that team? Like, why wouldn't you do that if you're Oklahoma City? Why wouldn't any playoff team right now be like, yeah, we'll take Nickeil Alexander-Walker on for $14 million starting salary in 2025 when guys are making 60? Like, sounds like a big number as the mid-level. Like, I think he's going to get that for sure. So then the Wolves, where they have the advantage, is it's like, offer him literally $1 million more than that per year.
Right.
Like there's not going to be very many teams who can give him, the Nets are like the only team with this cap space to really blow them out of the water, and probably would be a good idea for the Nets to sign him, right? Like I would be considering that 25-year-old Nickeil Alexander-Walker, lock him up to a 4-year, like a long-term sort of thing. Sure. But it's like one team. Maybe they're not going to want to be able to do it. But point being, there's some risk there, though I think the Wolves have a pretty decent amount of control in that situation. Also, just knowing how both of those guys have gotten their break and are very grateful for their time, in Minnesota, that Minnesota put them on, gave them opportunities, put them on the map, the opportunity to make this much money. So,
and it's a fine line because, again, I want to get over it. It's 2024, but we have just shown now, like, you made the Karl-Anthony Towns trade, which is so far probably a losing trade for one franchise, Minnesota, but to try to have this extra flexibility. But I mean, there is a path where this all really works out well, and there's a path where this all works out fucking terrible.
Yeah, sure. And that's
what I mean?
That's the risk. And the little bit of the value of flexibility is it's just like scooting the bumpers in from the gutter a little bit,
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
They're just not trying to avoid those situations. And the best way to do that is with flexibility and not get yourself in a situation, again, like Denver was, where you're just strapped. There's like literally, there's nothing you can do to retain your guy that you want to be able to retain. They still have some optionality here. And there's also a case to be made that the Randle option of him opting in and one of Naz or Nickeil resigning is better, because maybe Julius Randle is so much better than what they could ultimately get in with the mid-level option there. And I just think we need to understand what the opportunity cost of keeping Julius Randle is at the trade deadline, because if they wanted to, I would imagine they could trade Julius Randle and that Detroit first to somebody to dump the salary easy. I mean, that it would shock me if the Washington wouldn't be like, yeah, here's some expiring salary, do whatever you want with it. We will take on Julius Randle and his player option for next season for a first round pick in this loaded draft. Like, that's not what you want to think about. It's not what I think Julius Randle's value is. It's not a move that you would want to make, but that move ensures he can't opt into his player option, which opens up this door, which is like, okay, Nickeil and Naz probably plus, and have your people out there looking and talking to people about who your options are with this mid-level. If you've got a couple guys you think you might have a chance at, whatever. I don't know. I think Chris Finch and Tim Connolly would think it's ridiculous to dump Julius Randle, but I think it would be misguided, in my opinion, to treat that as a ridiculous hypothetical. You can make a case, and let's see the rest of the season, particularly these next 3 weeks, of what you believe you can get there, because like you've said, like a couple times today, Julius is showing you that he can fit into this and you can win a little bit more. But let's not forget what the cost could be of Julius eventually opting into that contract if you don't pull the trigger on trading him in some form or fashion. We should know that stuff before we go in and start shaping our opinions of whatever is or is not going to happen at this trade deadline.
And we have no reason to believe that these conversations aren't happening on a weekly basis, daily basis in the front office, because while Tim Connolly is still here, obviously he has an opt out or in later this summer. This is the type of stuff you talk about. This is the type of stuff you have meetings about. But it is just fascinating because even I saw Painting post this kind of hypothetical, but if I traded my Equinox for a bike, a skateboard, and a hockey stick, and the bike has no tires, and then I have to attach the hockey stick to get rid of the bike, aka that Detroit pick, now I'm just trading my Equinox for a skateboard. And Dante DiVincenzo is a fucking awesome skateboard, but I just
and financial flexibility. It's like
right. But I'm saying
the
now I have the financial flexibility to get rollerblades. So it is
There we go.
a fascinating thing because I just think, again, basketball for dummies. If you were like, hey, you and I running the team, we're gonna trade Julius. We're gonna get rid of that, the Pistons pick. You can't do the Motor City Minute. But now we have flexibility. I would be like, well, that's stupid. That was a good asset. But then you would be like, yeah, but now we know for sure because we talked like Nas and Nikhil are coming back. So it's just all one big set of dominoes that I think it's really important to talk about on the 10th of January. Because to me, it kind of reminds me of this happened with the Lakers. Like D'Lo started playing really well towards the end of the season. They kind of kept him.
He did that on the Wolves too.
Yeah. And he's a free agent this summer. Maybe you go get him for the mid-level. No, so this is all, I mean, I don't think you and I are necessarily coming to, right? I'm speaking for you, but we're not coming to a decision or like, I'm actually more confused than I ever have been, but at least I know what the paths are now as we approach this deadline because I don't know, like I still am probably echoing the sentiment of a lot of fans that like Nas should be the power forward of this team, longest tenured Wolf, great, developmental story, but also just kind of fits more. Right. But again, these comments that Finch made after the Pelicans game and that Julius made after the Magic game last night, like we might be the minority there. Like I think he's not maybe a move for another move. Maybe he's their guy, which would be
and what we want to be doing, I think today is talking about both sides of it. And obviously they are not, as is of course understandable, how teams operate is they are going to propaganda their own currently existing pieces, right? Like Chris Finch is going to be, or Tim Conley is going to be like, well, let me tell you about the opportunity cost of Julius Randle not opting in and all the good things that could come from us. So we need to kind of think about those things independent of what they're saying, but we also need to listen to what Chris Finch is saying about Julius Randle, what Julius Randle is indicating about his relationship with Finch and the group there. And we have to look at the basketball and let's talk a little bit because I thought the bigs were big in that game. I think this is a really good segue specifically to Randle. Like Randle showcased in that Orlando game last night what and where his special value comes from. He is a problem if you are not bringing doubles and you don't have a really big individual defender who's a really high level defender to be able to slow him down. If you put Caleb Houston's and Trevelin Quinn's on him, like barbecue chicken, man. I mean, particularly if he's hitting that like little mid-range thing once he gets to like 10 feet, like he can, if he's going to be a problem in that way. And then once he's a problem, teams have to start bringing double teams, and he's pretty good at passing out of those to get the ball in rotation, either for maybe a direct assist on a kick out. How many times have we seen him do that to DiVincenzo this year, or Ant, whatever, or Jaden in the corner? Like he can be effective that way when a team brings a double team because he's killing his one-on-one matchup. The question I have about Julius Randle and his long-term fit, and I think this is so related to this whole player option conundrum, is I have to ask myself when it's the playoffs and the guy who's assigned to Julius Randle, it's not going to be a higher caliber team, right? Is that guy going to need help? That's the question. It's that simple. Can Julius cook that guy, or is that that guy is going to need help? Or is it going to be Jalen Williams and he's able to contain that? Is it going to be PJ Washington or Daniel Gafford and he's able to contain that? Aaron Gordon. I think Aaron Gordon might need to guard Ant, but whatever. But like, so that's a little bit, can you shift things around and do that? I'm seeing Julius Randle cook Trevelin Queens. I think I said Quinn a bunch of times. I don't know or yet feel comfortable that he's going to be a problem in a playoff series. And then because of that, become a Wolves problem if Jalen Williams is on him and it's just like, nope. These little 10-footers, I'm not letting you get to your spot. You can shoot 40 of those in this series, but you're going to make about 12. If it's that level of defender against Julius Randle, he could shoot the Wolves in their foot and make them lose a series in that way. Now, can they keep building on this Julius Randle momentum that has been like low-key building over the course of the season and find more and better ways and positions to put him in, more positions to put him in to be a problem. I'm seeing him in two-man game with Mike Conley. That's something. We've seen more of him and Ant playing off of each other in perimeter-oriented actions. Can we add more things to the Julius Randle bag? If so, then maybe there is extended value of keeping him and even being a good piece in the playoffs. But right now I'm concerned about the 1-8 matchup and Jalen Williams just shutting that off, or a player like that just shutting that off and having the inverse effect. I thought he was great last night. I thought, like, by Ant basically handing the baton of his hot shooting to Julius and them just kind of pushing away, that game they had won early and it was done. You know, they just kind of coasted. They just kind of coasted from there. My question is, or just the thing I have to acknowledge, is that team was not playing with their starters, you know? And Julius was beating up. He was beating up bench guys there. So it's hard because I don't want to take away from that, but I got to consider the playoff part of it. And I'm not sold that Julius is going to be a problem in the playoffs, just like I'm not sold Rudy's going to be. In the same way that Rudy, I know I'm kind of going on a tangent here, but like Rudy killed it these last two games, right? Like defense, like good luck getting the basket. Teams couldn't, like, he's swatting CJ McCollum in the mid-range. He's swatting DeJounte Murray there, but Tadze at the rim last night. All these blocks, all these never minds, whatever. Well, you know what, Kyle? He was guarding Yves Missi and Goga Batadze. You can play drop the whole game. And you can just sit at the rim and you can do that. Rudy doesn't need to worry about getting out there on the pop to guard Karl, or to guard Embiid, to guard the guys who can put Wemby, who can punish that. He can sit there, you know, and so that's a concern about Rudy in the same way it is about Randle, where it's like, well, Rudy, are you going to be able to be that much of a defensive asset in the playoffs if it's against Şengün, who's not only maybe going to be able to space you a little bit, but is also going to be able to post you up? Like right now, when I see Rudy and Randle play well, and they undeniably play well, I'm seeing it against the archetypes of players that are not going to be in the playoff series that they have to win to be able to go to the conference finals or to be able to go to the finals. And maybe that's too high of a bar, but if you're building a roster, to me, with skill sets of guys that I question their ability to be able to do their best stuff in the playoffs, and I very much question that with Julius Randle and Rudy Gobert. So I don't know it. And then I'm thinking about these alternate paths of what you can do from a salary cap standpoint and transactions. Like, I'm sorry, you got to show it to me against better teams. And there's been 40 games this season. I've seen Rudy get beat in those ways every time. And I've seen Julius Randle largely get stopped against real perimeter defenders. So I get Finch is pumping his tires and believes in Julius Randle. But do you believe in what I'm talking about? Like, and maybe what Finch's answer is I'm not there yet. We're trying to figure out what we want to be when they get there. But that's what I start struggling with when I think about the future and the present kind of simultaneously.
To ensure that I don't opt out of my contract, do you want to do a couple more ad reads really quick?
Yes. Today's show is brought to you by Doer Jeans, D-U-E-R. Kyle's wearing some right now. They really are, right? Comfortable, awesome. Kyle, where so just sitting, like if you're sitting at your desk all day or on the move, having something that looks like the stiff, good-looking pants that you have, but bends in a way and is breathable in a way that those, you know, thicker like jeans or I guess khaki type things wouldn't be. I really do love these. I wear them often in my own life, and if part of your New Year's resolution is kind of revamping your wardrobe, we would love it if you considered Doer as an option there. I've ordered mine for the new year. We would love it if you would update your wardrobe as well. Check out their flagship stores in LA or Denver, or shop online at shopdoer.com/DaneMoore. Right now, my listeners get 20% off with their first purchase when they use that exclusive URL, shopdoer.com/DaneMoore. Such a great deal. Don't wait to get 20% off now. Shopdoer.com/DaneMoore. Kyle.
No, I just, no one's tuning into this podcast to be like, listen to us say, I don't know. But I think that was a really good 40-ish minutes of this is the dilemma. Because I, too, when you were saying about Finch, maybe honestly with truth terms, being like, I don't know. I think sometimes I think a lot of the frustration is actually my fault. Because you and I were like, let's give it 20 games. Let's give it 20 games. Like, okay, maybe 25 games, but then figure it the fuck out. Like, what if it takes him 60 games to just really figure out, like, everything you said in your little tangent there was really well thought out. And I was just thinking, Rudy looked really good against the Pelicans, right? Defensively. Because I thought Julius just said, mano-y-mano, I'm taking Zion. Mm-hmm. And it kind of worked. And then last night, this is very, very niche, but like first play of the game, what was it? A Rudy dunk off a Julius lob. Yep. So maybe it is coming together, not at the speed that you and I had predicted back when we did our Farewell Cat pod, but maybe it is coming together. But all of this, and this is, I think, the way I would want to segue because I have nothing else to add. What is that spreadsheet all about? In my opinion, in your opinion, what is this whole conversation about? It's maximizing flexibility, roster construction, a long-term plan to build around 5. You know what I mean? Like to build around Anthony Edwards, who has once again, for the second time in this season, kind of lashed out publicly after a game. First it was about the defense, then it was about the style of play, and then just kind of willed his team to another level. And I think right now the level they're playing at, regardless of the opponent, is because Ant is once again, what does he have, 130 points in 4 games? Mm-hmm. So everything you're talking about to me just comes back to this kind of continued dominance that Ant has brought upon us. And that's why, how does Julius play with Rudy? All these little things, they all matter. But at the end of the day, when the meeting is done, it should be like, okay, but how's it going to affect Ant? That's how I think about all this stuff.
Can we play that Finch clip right now?
I'd love to. I don't have it. Do you have it?
I have it, yeah.
As recently as a week ago, Anthony was not happy with how he was playing. Have you noticed that he's taken?
I think he's pretty happy now. I think, listen, I mean, much has been said about that, and anybody who knows Ant knows that everything that comes out of his mouth is real and it's genuine, and he's just frustrated. Upon reflection, he realized this is his new reality. You want to be a great player in the league, this is what you're going to face, and his approach has changed. He's using strategies to attack these things. He's staying engaged. He's kind of like, piece by piecing it through the game, like, because, every possession might be different. So, and that's different for him. Like, in years gone by, he'd face a lot of different coverages, but might be like all game they do something. Now they're mixing it up, trying to keep him off balance. So he's too much of a competitor to let anything get to him. Ultimately, that was just a moment in time and something that he was feeling at that moment. But he's been great ever since.
What's the one thing you notice that's different? Is it maybe make
quicker decisions? He's quicker decisions for sure. I definitely quicker decisions, simplifying things when he does go, committing to the 3, and then just as you would, tactically trying to take advantage of the coverage, in the right way, and where his teammates can benefit too. So,
Coach, you mentioned this team being depleted.
But sorry about that.
I was just going to say, you're there for all these, especially at home. Chris Hine, great question there on the road. But like him or hate him, I actually thought last night, if you can go back on YouTube to the teams page, I thought last night was one of the best post-game pressers from Finch. He went like 10 or 12 minutes, and he talked about a lot of stuff, and that was some of the best quotes. But I don't know.
What did other things that he talked about? Talked about the team being a better rhythm, guys being more locked in. That sounds like way more cliche when I read it off these notes. But it sounded like there. He did talk about really liking Mike's like new rotation pattern, or like kind of throwing that into the water and testing what that is. It seemed like it's like the way he said it was go from like 48 minutes down to 36.
Yeah.
And he liked how he could, the minutes that he plays within the game. I was like, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. So he's ruling out the first 6 minutes, and then he's ruling out the last 6 minutes of the game, but he's closed a lot. Maybe he's ruling out the first 6 minutes of the second half. I don't know, that one didn't make any sense to me. But it makes sense that he's liking being able to kind of toy with groups with Mike Conley a little bit more than he's been able to. Talk about the third quarters being bad. And he's like, this team reminds me right now of a team from a couple seasons ago where they're a team that chooses the hard path is what he also said. And
as he said that, the FanDuel Sports Network played the last minute of the Pelicans-Wolves game where Julius Randle could have killed the clock but decided to throw an oop to Ant, and then Ant tried to end one mixtape, split the guys. And Chris Finch lost 6 different hairs at that time. No, the biggest thing for me, and I've obviously been more pro Chris Finch than others, and it's been a challenging season for a lot of different reasons. I think their coaching staff has a lot of challenges because they kind of had the rug pulled out from under them right before media day with a big roster change. But the vibe I got from that press conference, and I think a lot of people should listen to it, is, and this is probably what you want from your favorite team, is that I don't think they've been as reactionary or as up and down as like Wolves Twitter or myself. Like a week to reflect on this now, I probably think I might have overreacted to Ant's comments last week after the Celtics game. But I still believe that it was just like, oh, that's not the time to say them, right? Like not tonight when all your teammates hit all these shots. But the pushback I got, I was like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think what Finch is saying echoes what Chris Hines said the other day, which I thought was super valuable. That's who Ant is, and that's what we want from Ant. But in this 2025 media, like it's not like, oh, Ant's mad that his teammates missed shots tonight. He wants to trade. That's just who he is. Like you don't need to always do that stuff. Not with this kid. This kid just wants to win. And I thought last night Finch kind of echoed that, like, a lot of the noise outside, like we've been pretty D-low, not too high, not too low, but we are at least trending in the right direction. And with Ant, I mean, again, I kind of gap year all this stuff. I just think this year is the story of Ant taking another leap. And he's done it as a leader, right? Every time you talk to him post game, he says something that goes viral, whether it be too many threes or defense or whatever. And then
too many Fs.
Yeah, I irregardless, if you know, backing it up with his play. So that's why the salary cap stuff really matters to me, because even as a Jaden McDaniels fan or, Rob Dillingham muse, this is all about threading 155 million different needles so that when Anthony Edwards is at that Luka age, that Jason Tatum age, I mean, everyone's talking about right now, like, how great are the Celtics? Like, how well-built are the Celtics? We got Tatum's in his prime. Yeah. Shea, who's a couple years older, like, how great is OKC and stuff? They've been so patient. But they built that thing for multiple years. Ant is way younger than those guys, not at the same level in terms of competing as OKC and the Celtics. But that should be your ultimate goal, even if you have to take a sneaky gap year or whatever. So his play has just ballooned again. Last night, obviously, I think he only made 1 2-point shot. It was pretty noteworthy. I still like, the 3-pointer, as Finch mentioned, like embracing that. Dude, just from like a Timberwolves perspective, like for a franchise that passed on Steph Curry and will never get that back, like Anthony Edwards isn't Steph Curry, but I haven't seen a guy shoot like that. Like it's incredible. I always thought like this was just a hot month to start the season. It would really die down. If this is like kind of who he is, I don't know, man. That's crazy.
If this is who he is from a 3-point shooting standpoint, which I mean, how could we argue?
I don't know.
Some sort of flash in the pan. It's not like he's shooting 12 threes a game and has been doing that all season and is making them at like the same clip. There's not really a variability to it. He's just like become bona fide one of the best shooters in the league, period. Like, or at least like off the dribble shooters for sure. I think maybe if you just set him up and some catch and shoot specialists, yeah, they could beat him. But he's a 40+% guy and he's taken 60+% of them off the dribble, and the step, I mean, the left step back is technically is a nasty move. And he's just going to continue to be special in that sort of way. But what teams are going to do is that when you set screens, they're obviously not going to go under it. They're not going to go up to touch. He's just going to shoot over the top of that. They are going to blitz him. They are going to put 2 on the ball. And that's where Ant's journey that's the next puzzle pack. That's where you got to go. They're putting 2 there. And I love what Finch said something earlier this season, goes, well, you can't ask them not to do it. They're like, if teams want to guard you that way, you have to demand that they don't, by being able to take advantage of a team putting 2 on you and being able to pass your way through it. And it's a lot about the guys on the backside, then Rudy being able to catch it and finish it, Jaden being able to make corner threes, Randle being able to catch it and go quickly. But Ant needs to be able to deliver it to them. And what he's done in these last, since the Boston game, 4 games?
4 games,
Even if you include the Detroit loss. Since the Boston game, he's been getting off of it when they put 2 on him. But it's not Boston or OKC putting the 2 on him. Like, his comments, and this is right, the genesis of his frustrations were, okay, they're not just putting 2 on the ball on me. They're putting 2 Oklahoma City players on me. They're playing 2 Boston players on me. That's really hard. I mean, Oklahoma City, go back and watch those. It looks extremely difficult for Ant to be able to get to anything there. So he happened to play Oklahoma City and Boston 2 games in a row, the 2 most frustrating teams, I would think, in the league, to put 2 on you for the entirety of the night. You lose both of those games, and then you just go, like, that's what he did. He wasn't thinking in that moment about the fact that his teammates in that Boston game were shooting over like 50% from 3. He wasn't thinking about it. He was just being 23 and frustrated. And I'm not saying that as like a pass. I'm saying that as like you can't do that. Like, that wasn't smart. That wasn't smart to do. What are you going to do about it? And so now in these next games, these teams who have lesser defenders, he's going through the machinations of it, right? He's found Rudy on some short rolls, on some, that one when they put 2 on him and Rudy just ducked all the way down to the basket and threw like a 25-foot pass to him. Rudy caught it and dunked it. And that sounds easy, but if you watch every game like you and I do, he misses that all the time. Rudy's all the time. So we're seeing progression from Ant, but this is even Ant's way of what I was saying about Randle and Gobert earlier. Can you do this when it's not Cole Anthony guarding you, when it's not, Caleb Houston guarding you, right? Like, he's been killing it against the guys who have been guarding him now, and I think it's a really great growth that gives me confidence. The difference for me with Ant versus Randle and Gobert is, like, I believe if you give him reps and you allow him to learn, he will be able to do it against great defenders. I don't know if I feel that way about Randle and Gobert. You understand, like, that distinction that I make?
Yeah, apologies for my audio right now. My HOA dollars are hard at work as they blow leaves into one pile, and then next week they blow them into the other pile. I'm totally with you. And again, when I watch Ant play again and some of the stuff he's doing, again, I still tie it back into what we just talked about in the past of, you just have to figure out, and you don't always have a year to do it. Like, the Julius Randle conundrum, to me, isn't an 82-game question. You even brought up the playoff stuff, which is post-82 games. I'm like, you got 60 games or whatever, 55 games before the trade deadline. The trade deadline is a really important step, because if you have him on your roster on February 7th,
right,
you lose the F word. And the F word that we all embrace is flexibility, and that's probably the biggest thing for this team moving forward, is to try to have as much of that as possible. So, just watching him again. Also, too, I think we might be getting to a point where I can just start to spray you with random topics, but like the changing of the starting lineup and stuff, I just think Ant has his joy back. And maybe that's because, again, he's scoring all the points in the world and he's dunking on everyone. But to me, some of that joy, and I wonder if you agree with this, really comes with just playing next to Dante, who,
sure,
this sounds so stupid, but when I think of just like role players that you could create in a lab to play next to Ant, and I'm talking about everything, not just basketball skill, like mentality, like Dante DiVincenzo is not Karl Anthony Towns, but he's a really good asset to acquire in a trade like that, because I think now that he's found his, he's more comfortable, he got over, getting traded, having to move, all that stuff, I think he is, there are a lot of nights where I'm just like, is he the second best player on the team, making $10 million a year? So I think that starting lineup thing did help. Finch acknowledged last night that Mike looks just more comfortable in a different role now. Maybe they can do another one of those. I don't think they're ever going to bench Jaden, and at this point, I don't think they're ever going to bench Julius, but are there other ways to shift some of this stuff? Things that I thought they should have done earlier in the season, but they've done them now, and I think they've paid off dividends. And again, they've made Ant just more comfortable. I mean, that dunk last night, his only 2-point make, is because the floor is so well spaced. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, totally.
So if I have to sacrifice Jaden McDaniels on the bench to get more posters, like, I'm all for it. But last night was just a nice little glimpse again of when this thing is, because I think a lot of fans have been like, this blow it up, it's broken, but you just got to sometimes pull little levers. You don't need to pull the big one that everyone, the floor just falls out. Right. I thought last night was another glimpse against an underman team. Like, that was the worst team they played, right? Like, the Clippers were actually good and had Kawhi. I thought the Pelicans were a little feisty. Last night was a tough Magic game, but they blew them out. They blew them out by 20 points.
Handled them. Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Dante. I want to talk about him and specifically kind of this newer version we've been seeing from him and what we can kind of expect from him in what now we're assuming is going to be a long stay in the starting lineup. But we'll grab one more ad break here to let you know that you should go to Treasure Island Resort and Casino on Monday night to watch the Vikings and Rams playoff game. They do live watch parties in the Parlay Lounge. Kyle and I hosted one there a couple months back for a Wolves game, and as fun as that was, I'm sure it's going to be even crazier there for the Vikings game on Monday night. Given where this Vikings team is, it's they provide a lot at these watch parties. At kickoff, there's free food out there, appetizers, those sort of things that the casino supplies to the people watching the games in the Parlay Lounge, which is like, as you can kind of see on the screen, it's like kind of like a sports book setup, TV screens and bars everywhere. There's also $4 Miller Lights for the games, $5 Absolute Wild Berries. And then, they got deals on pull tab, $20, and select pull tabs receive an additional $5. There's a whole bunch of stuff that they're doing there. They would love for you to come watch the Vikings game in the Parlay Lounge at Treasure Island Resort and Casino. You can visit ticasino.com for more details. Kyle, let's also get to some prize picks here. Today's show is brought to you by Prize Picks. And Kyle and I on Fridays give you a couple of picks we like for over the weekend as we put together daily fantasy lineups. Kyle, I'm assuming you did the NFL. I haven't really been following it this week, just no fantasy, I'll lock in here in the next 24 hours.
When you were just like, when fantasy ends, football ends. And I'm like, canceling all these dinners with my wife's friends. Like, I don't know if you guys know, but the Super Wild Card round is this weekend, which apparently we don't call it that anymore. We call it just the Wild Card round. I did have two quick. Zay Flowers for the Ravens is out. So Minnesota's own, I would take Rashad Bateman more than, I think it's 46.5 receiving yards. I think the Ravens might win the Super Bowl. So I think the Ravens pound Pittsburgh more than 46.5. And then Nico Collins, that's a huge number for the Texans. He's kind of all they got now with no Diggs and no Tank Dell. I think it's 87.5 maybe. I would go less than the Chargers, in my opinion, are going to beat the Texans too. So the Chargers are really well coached, have a good defense. Derwin James, safety coverage. Look at me, football. So those two, and then maybe, like I said, Mixon's one of Dane's favorite basketball ones. Karl-Anthony Towns playing 64 minutes a night for the Knicks. So just take his points, rebounds, and assists over because he's been hooping.
Yeah, they play the Thunder tonight. That's what I was just kind of looking at when I was digging around with it.
Is that game on HGTV, or what did Adam Silver put it?
I think so. I did. They played each other earlier this week. It was on League Pass, and I watched it. And it was interesting watching that game. Like, they did the thing with Carl where they guarded him with a 4. But remember how they used to always, like, teams would always do that, but then they would, like, bring doubles? Well, the Thunder just put Jalen Williams on him. And it's like, it's just one-on-one. It's Carl being guarded by a 6'6" guy, and they don't bring help. And it really I watched this game, and it really makes it a Cat versus Jalen Williams game. Is like, I guess, the X factors, if you wanted to say that. And I remember going into that game, I'm like, man, Oklahoma City's gonna give Carl problems, right? Like, they're gonna guard him with a smaller guy, and they're gonna help. And when he's driving, it's gonna get real voltagey. Well, he didn't do that, and he really can, if he plays calm, handle that Jalen Williams matchup with his size one-on-one. So I'm saying Karl-Anthony Towns over 41.5 points plus rebounds and assists tonight. And I'm going to say that Williams loses that matchup. And I'm going to say he has less than 31.5 points plus rebounds plus assists, maybe even some foul trouble on Carl. So that was two that I was looking at this morning along with Kyle's. Anybody you can make a lineup, whatever sport you want to look at. They got it all there. That's some we like. Go to prizepicks.com, prizepicks app, use promo code Dane for $50 when you sign up. And it's Flex Friday or Flex Friday. Is that what you're doing over there?
Yeah, Flex Friday. Just you got to go to the promos tab, opt in. But then again, you can make one of these bets, submit one of these entries, and just get it protected. Whereas if it loses, you get your money back in credits. So it's a really fun way to kind of have something to look forward to this weekend. Again, good football, really good basketball. Despite what the internet may say, like basketball is really good right now, and there's a lot of good games going on. So go to Flex Friday, go to PrizePicks, and use promo code Dane.
Awesome. Okay, let's last segment here. Kyle, let's do a little bit of, I don't know, jump around, maybe some miscellaneous sort of stuff. But you were talking about Donte DiVincenzo, and like we're getting to know him, right? And who he actually is. Because the beginning of the season, he was clearly acclimating. He's starting now. We're seeing the threat of his 3-point shot, but just overall what he brings to lineups, like really interesting. If you look at like some lineup data from the first 15 games of the season versus the last 15 games, and some of the bad lineups that included Donte are some of those same lineups or some of the better ones now. And that's because he's starting to fit in, which I don't know how my messed up brain works. It goes, well, how could it be even better? Right. Because we do know in all seriousness that this team needs to play better offense, right? Like starting lineup change. Okay, good. Now what's next? How does it continue to improve? And I think with Donte, when I look at this, or look at his play, I see the 35% he's shooting from three thus far this season. I'm like, okay, that's going to go up. That's going to be some natural progression to the mean. He's going to get more comfortable with everybody. But what's the one thing that if you could nitpick Donte DiVincenzo's game, I want to see if you're on the same page as me. What bothers you about his DiVincenzo's offensive game?
I do want to just add that whatever number you said shooting from three, I think he's 40% since December 1st.
Okay, cool.
So again, like I also think there's a little correlation with the last 4 or 5 games. He scored like less than 12 points, whereas he had some big scoring performances in December. I think that ties into maybe having to play a little more point guard and set the table for things.
Sure.
I hate when you do this because I don't want to put myself in the wrong thing, but I do not love sometimes like just when he jumps in the air and turns the ball over, or he pushes pace a little too much. Like he is back to the Nikhil thing of, okay, Mike on the second unit, that's good. Rob has one healthy ankle, that's bad. So now we got to play more point guards without natural point guards, and then get sped up a little bit. I mean, last night Donte had one that sticks in my mind where he like got the ball on the break, pushed it, got to the rim, had nothing to do, turned around, threw it out, and they just stole it. And it was a 4-on-1 for the Magic.
That's where I'm at with it. It's like decision making and finishing in and or around the basket. Because we know a lot of his turnovers this season have been when he's dropped exactly what you're just describing there. He's also of combo guards in the league. There's like 40 of them on this list who played over 750 minutes thus far this season. He's in last in field goal percentage in the rim. He's the only combo guard in the league that's played over 750 minutes that has made under 50% of his shots at the rim. It was kind of like the can't finish thing, with Tibbs is what comes to my mind here. And really that's been the one area where we haven't actually seen Donte be impactful offensively. I have no doubt about his ability to be a 3-point shooting threat. I think we're going to be able to see more of him in pick and roll. I'm not concerned really about him just handling and getting it up the court, at least in comparison to Nikhil. Like, I think Dante's pretty solid there. The thing is like, can we put him in situations less to do the thing he's worst at, which is finishing around the basket? Or can we position the team in a way that allows the things he's worst at to be able to do them better? And that's what I go to with spacing as well. If there is better spacing in DiVincenzo lineups, then there is going to be more room for him to finish around the basket. And I think that number goes up, and there will be fewer of those to the basket, driving, jump pass, turns, turnovers, or just kind of juiceless kickouts. If there's one area that I'm really looking at with DiVincenzo, or if we look back 25 games from now and we're like, hey, man, Wolves offense has been top 10 for whatever, this, and this is going on. I think one element that will have changed is DiVincenzo becomes a threat at all levels of the floor, because we know he's a three-point shooter. He's not a threat right now at the rim. And I was just kind of thinking about that last night of and kind of the idea of, is this a problem? Or is this something that they can improve over the course of the season? And I think he shot better than there in previous seasons. There's just some size limitations that are going to be natural there. But that's one area. Can he be a little bit more of a force and a finisher around the basket? He's actually playing pretty well from Florida range, but can he get all the way to the rim and finish a little bit more and make strong decisions down there? Is one thing I'm thinking about with DiVincenzo for sure.
There's a chance though that he can't.
Yep.
Right? Because would you be like, I feel like you and Dante might be the same height. Like Dante DiVincenzo is a smaller guard. I know they list him at 6'4".
A little bit bigger than me, but yeah.
You know what I mean? So maybe that in on this the turnover thing, it was hard to watch him. I mean, this is what you teach in YBL, like don't jump past, like don't jump and then not have any. But they're asking him again to do stuff that I think when they asked Nikhil, I try to give him a little longer leash of like, I don't think Dante DiVincenzo is a point guard. Mm-hmm. I think he's like, if Julius were to opt out back to segment 1 and Nas were to start, I mean, I think Dante DiVincenzo's best role in this league for the rest of his career is to be the sixth man that can also just close games. So right. I don't know. I mean, I know this has worked this week. I still don't know if I'm like the biggest fan of, 25-26, the Wolves starting point guard is Dante DiVincenzo. That's not what I'm looking for. That's got to be Rob.
Theoretically Rob, yeah. Right.
But,
no, that's a good point of, yeah.
But I just think, again.
Right now he is the point guard. He literally
right, for sure. Yeah, and you showed a ton of numbers and colors, and I just watch him get the rebound and flick it backwards to Ant. Like, I just think the vibes he brings, he is very much swag level at 100. And I think that's why probably it correlates exactly to December 2nd when this all started, shooting 40% from 3. I mean, Jim Pete kind of had a fun comment on it last night about how his balance and like his shot mechanics, if he can just, the spacing is almost maybe always going to be an issue with this team as long as Rudy Gobert is on the team and some of the other dynamics. Jaden can't really shoot. But if Dante can just rip off twice a game, a 35-footer that goes in,
and we believe that he's going to, right? Like, I think
preseason stuff now. He's back to preseason, I crossed. Yep.
Just like 10 a game, 42% or whatever. Like, I think I expect it. I actually expect that. Like, I think he is going to be, from here on out, when we do the numbers, we look back at like, hey, man, have you seen what the DiVincenzo shooting numbers are for December or January? Like, we're going to be like, oh, yeah, October and November were weird. And then we got Dante DiVincenzo, the shooter. So I'm saying that as a baseline. What else? So, like, what more can we get? We're getting defense from him. I'm liking that, getting that pace. I'm nitpicking here, but it's like, I just believe in the stuff that we got right now is like there to stay. I really do. So what more? Like, is there more? I guess is what I'm asking.
I mean, one thing that's more is that no one will ever catch Mike Conley because he just played with him for so long and kind of got it. But Dante's the second best player in terms of getting Rudy easy touches, in my mind. Like when you watch and go watch this again, like, or look forward, moving forward. When Dante drives, he just has like the touch to finish, like you're saying right now with the floater game and maybe finally getting to the rim more. But the way he finds Rudy, like he knows, as we all do as fans or people covering this team, like you have to get Rudy Gobert the ball certain ways. He is not like Anthony Davis that can just catch. He's not Justin Jefferson. He can't catch all the different ways, right? Mm-hmm. He is like a slot receiver that has to have the ball in his chest. So I think Dante does a really good job of getting Rudy kind of involved a little more.
That's a good thing to bring up. Yep.
By drawing 2 or 3 guys and then getting it to Rudy. There was one play last night, man, where Julius also did that and Rudy caught it and then pump faked. It's like, dude, you have to, like, please Shaq a dunk one time. Draw contact, like jump and be pissed off at people and dunk the ball. You know exactly.
It was because he didn't have, I know what you're talking about. He didn't secure it on the catch.
Well, did they stop doing the tennis ball thing or what? Like, are we still throwing?
Yeah, he's not working with that guy anymore.
All right, well, I don't know why. Talk to new ownership about this because we need to get more tennis balls in the practice facility. No, I think that's another one too. Is I think Dante getting Rudy involved is a big one. Also, too, like Dante, whether you like watching Julius go iso ball for 22 seconds, I always said that Kyle Anderson spoke French. Like Dante speaks whatever language Julius Randle is speaking because he just knows I probably got to get Julius something here. Like I got to give him a touch because he's crabby, whatever, and he's really good at that. So that's another aspect of.
And then don't you just see him doing this? It's like the Kyle Anderson thing where he would do. Remember, Kyle would like wave his head and like his arm, be like, "Come on, Ant, we're running." You know, I saw Dante do some of that too. Of like, "Nope, you're not gonna walk this up here. Like, let's get some, even if it's not like pace that's gonna lead to a transition bucket, like some pace, like so." By the time you cross the half court line, you're rolling down the hill, you know, rather than the like 4, you know, like we don't like. Then they're just gonna load up on you, Ant. They're gonna put 2 of the like they're gonna leave Jaden, Rudy. They're gonna be like, all right, somebody will just like let me know if he gets too wide open, you know.
Yeah.
But if you start moving, like you can get a step ahead of.
I just think he's been great. I think Nikhil.
Yeah.
I think Nikhil obviously was like your answer for maybe most. And I'm not saying best player, best offensive player, and stuff. Just like most valuable player that led to winning. It was probably Nikhil's award for a while. It's Ant now, but if it was like who's runner up, I mean, I just think it's Dante for all these little things that, especially when the Wolves win and the vibes are better, I really strongly suggest like go rewatch games and don't watch the ball this time. Like go watch, just like focus on Dante on this play, even if he never touches the ball, because he's doing all those little extra things to just get the ball in transition, to get the ball. Like a lot of times if the opposing team scores, he's the one that like sprints under the basket, gets the ball back in, and like, let's just keep this shit moving. So I think that's a big thing for a team that continuously gets late into shot clocks and has a lot of grenades. Him being out there to sometimes take those grenades and score from 35 feet, but also just the way he gets. This is a pretty unique team, and we've talked about this now for years, but like Julius needs a lot of touches. And Rudy does need touches, whether you agree with it or not. And finding Ant when he's on it. I mean, when Ant's on a heater, no one gets in the ball faster than Dante. So I don't want to say he's my favorite player right now, but he is so much fun to watch. And I think, well, the Karl-Anthony Towns trade, and he's third in the All-Star voting, and he's killing it in New York. The trade has not worked out so well for the Wolves right now, but having Dante DiVincenzo and putting him into your spreadsheet at $10 million a year for, 2 more years after this year?
12, but yeah.
12, he's everything I thought he would be, and honestly, more. Like, he's just great, and I just want to find him more ways to be comfortable because he's clearly now comfortable. And when the Rob thing comes back, like, I don't know, maybe that's
that'd be a good tandem. Yeah,
I think it would be an awesome tandem. So, it's an interesting thing to watch right now. But this week to me has been like, okay, the team responded again to Ant's comments. Ant responded to his own comments. Yeah. But when I tune in right now, I'm tuning in to watch Dante DiVincenzo play basketball.
One more thing from that new starting lineup, and you know, I just was kind of thinking about this, is like ripple effects of the starting lineup. Obviously, DiVincenzo's gonna feel one, right, or be a part of a ripple because he's part of the change. The next biggest ripple of a player that wasn't part of the change, if that makes sense, I think is Jaden McDaniels.
I thought you were going to say Naz Reid. Okay, keep going. I love this.
I think by the starting lineup changing and the rotation changing to bring, you know, the first sub being Mike and Naz for Julius and Dante, when before it was just Mike, and then it was, you know, it'd be Mike and Julius coming out at the beginning. It's just the way the rotation is being put together. And I actually think I disagree with the way they drag their feet on a starting lineup change. I still maybe would have a more fluid starting lineup. It would be another critique that I would have of them. Like, I think you have a perfect team to have a matchup based starting lineup thing. Every time I turn on a Spurs game who have like the same record as the Wolves, they have a different starting lineup. And it's not because guys are injured. They like tweak stuff around for matchups. I think the Wolves, to me, that's how I would handle the starting lineup if I were this team. But I give them an A on back end rotations. And it's something I really track. I think they've done a really good job of finding lineup combinations and numerous that work really well outside of the starting lineup and kind of curtail those to Randle. We've seen a lineup designed for Rudy and in a second unit. And what I think we're seeing now in this new iteration is Jaden in better lineups for him. We're seeing him play the 4 more with just one with just, you know, just Rudy or just Randle or just Reed. which puts him at the 4. Less spacing issues there. We're also seeing, while he still starts with both Gobert and Randle, and then thus starts the game in a weird spacing situation, we're seeing him play a lot more. I need to look up the exact minutes on this, but at least feels like we're seeing him a lot more playing with Reed and Randle, and then he's the 3.
Mm-hmm.
And if he's the 3 with Reed and Randle, that's a totally different spacing environment than when it's Gobert and Randle at the 5 and 4 and him at the 3. And so it's just a tweak to kind of help Jaden out. And it's also, I think, a good thing is it tests a little bit more of the value of Jaden at the 4, which is kind of this lingering question mark.
Yeah.
That's like fairly existential, right? Like for the long term and what this all is. Yeah. At year 2, and I mean, people who listen to this for a long time, I was like, what are we doing playing Jaden McDaniels at the 4? He's getting punked. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. And it didn't work. But Jaden McDaniels, I mean, how much weight do you think Jaden McDaniels has put on since then? 15?
Yeah.
I mean,
which I know you listening to this, if you just watch, like, you might think he lost 15 pounds.
Turn on a game from 2021 and see what Jaden McDaniels' frame looks like compared to today.
He was slimmer, right? Like he's slim, but he was slimmer back in his sophomore season. I'm just
open to the idea that might be a good spot for Jaden. Also, just operating within the reality of he's not really a shooter, so it's okay to curtail some things to that reality. It feels too often to me. I always reference like Josh Okogie as a player who had a green light that shouldn't, and it was just like, we believe in you, Josh Okogie. Be more than you can be. Seriously, it was like that was actually the motivation. They're like, well, he's going to have to shoot him to do it. And some players, it doesn't matter if you give them 3 threes or 7, they're 31% 3-point shooters. And that's just who Josh Okogie is. And Jaden's above that, but he's gotten like 4.5 seasons of like, take him, man. Above the break, semi-contested, fire it. You don't get enough shots. That's just not him. To me, that's not him. So like, what is a new reality that puts him in a situation to be maybe a corner crasher a little bit more, where you can, if he's at the 4, like sometimes you see him, he's like hesitant to go for an offensive rib. There's one of those last night. It's like hesitant to go in for a corner crash. It's like, no, man, if you're at the 4, you can go. Yeah, if Julius and Rudy are out there and they're both crashing, we probably don't need you flying in too, because it's good then on the other side. Also, when he's at the 4, he's not guarding at the point of attack as much. He might be guarding like a wing, and then Ant or Dante or Nikhil are at the point of attack. Like, I like that. I like him as a secondary rim protector in those sort of ways. I think Finch really knows Jaden's game, like and what he can be. And I think they're through a roster that's funky for him, finding better spots for him. So I just want to track that kind of going forward too, of like lineup combinations that Jaden doesn't feel like a problem in. And I'm feeling more of that since the starting lineup changed too.
I don't know if Jaden McDaniels will ever be a good shooter, but I think you would at least agree with me that doesn't mean that he can't be a really, really productive, beneficial player. And I think we're starting to see a little bit more of that stuff, right? Like I'm with you too on the shooting thing. At some point you got to, I know Ant made a shout out to Kilby, by the way, I think Ant made a little shooting mechanics change this summer. I'm sure Jaden has tweaked his jump shot or done some things, but I mean, Jim Pete kind of summed it up last night, right? When he had that one in the corner, every time Jaden takes a 3, kind of say a little prayer. You and me both, big guy.
And no more prayers. No more prayers.
Yeah, no more prayers. Because
play the dunker a little. Why can't he play the dunker a little bit like Minot does? Why can't he play that Minot role? Right? Like,
and again, some of this is just on him.
Offensively. Yeah.
Some of this is just on him. Like, it would be nice if he just made the shots. Like, being an open 3 and missing all those, that's a bummer. But the Ryan Saunders, no offense to him, but Josh Okogie thing of like, just keep taking them. Right. That's actually bad. Like that's bad coaching. Mm-hmm. And I think for Finch, with these different lineups and stuff and these different rotations, I will say like one random thing, because you said about like back end rotations and stuff. The one thing that I've come to appreciate more, while also kind of, hey, we're going to unlock Rudy Gobert's offense. Nope, that's bullshit. We have 8 starters. Nope, that's bullshit. But they do have 8 guys that can close. And I think that's the bigger thing. Like, they don't have 8 starters because they're never going to start Nas over Julius as long as he's on the team, in my opinion. Yeah. Right? Like, they're not going to start Nikhil over Jaden because, again, I think those guys play completely different roles. But I've just been more pleased with the idea of Finch, who we were critical of earlier on, like, is opening it up, right? Like, okay, Rudy, you're benched for the Rockets game, and now look how it worked. Like, we're open to closing, like starting with Dante, but closing with Mike, right? All those little things. To me, it's way more about who closes and who plays in that fourth quarter than who plays in the first 6 minutes of the game. Like, again, Kendrick Perkins is someone I actually know, but he always would start for the Thunder as like this honorary captain, and then 6 minutes in, the Thunder actually were good when they brought in Harden and played with Ibaka at the 5. So I just have been a big fan of that we're closing. Like, I don't know how they're going to close. And to your point about the Spurs,
I think that's okay.
I don't think that's how Finch does it. I remember Finch and Tim Conley saying once, like, we want teams to, when they traded for Gobert and had two bigs, like, we want teams to react to us. Yeah. I don't think they're going to ever be a reactionary team that's like, tonight we're going to do this.
Yeah. That's just you're totally right. That's just like a difference in opinion, and who am I?
No, and I'm with your opinion, but I'm just saying, like,
or who are we? Who are we? It's just like different coaches would approach it differently, and I can disagree with how they're approaching it from a starting standpoint, but then I'm also giving them an A on pretty much everything else they do behind that from a rotation standpoint. So it's like, I don't know, like, maybe that's okay. And maybe if the starting lineup does figure itself out a little bit more, as it seems like it's starting to do a little bit, maybe this is the best of bad options, which I know isn't a great sales pitch, and also makes it kind of feel like it's a roster that is constructed a little funky. And and it might just be that. It
ties into what we said for the first 30 minutes.
Exactly.
If the roster's funky and it's putting certain guys in tough spots, and again, I'm biased as hell, but I think this roster and this trade puts Jaden in a tough spot. I think it's put Naz Reid in a tough spot, which again, we can't go over 90 minutes, but I think Naz Reid has been hooping lately. And I don't know if it's just because there's a little less clutter coming off the bench, or just he's getting different minutes and rotations. That's something that you can kind of continue to track and talk about next week. But I think Naz Reid has been awesome lately, playing basketball.
Last night, yep.
And again, as I kind of just dump my brain, that's all I have for the week. Yeah. But I'd be dumb to not acknowledge, like, Terrence Shannon Jr. goes down to the G League. He's hooping too. And I do see people be like, why can't he get 3 to 5 minutes on this team? Because I think that's terrible. No. Like, I think it's terrible to do that. And I've actually had players on the, like, talk about that. You have had this as well. Like, I need like a baseline of like 10 to 12 minutes to get my rhythm. So yes, Terrence Shannon Jr. is way too good for the G League. I know he's a 24-year-old rookie. I do actually think he's part of their plan long-term, but 3 minutes is not going to do anything. Last night, the bench brigade came in, the third stringers, and played 3 minutes, and it was some of the worst basketball I've ever seen.
Shout out Jalen Clark.
But I mean, like, Jalen Clark got one shot in 3 minutes because 3 minutes is so fast. Yeah. So I think Terrence Shannon Jr., congrats to him. He killed it, 47 points for the Iowa Wolves. But I think we got to focus on these 8, maybe 9 guys. And when Rob's ankle heals up, that's going to be a pod you and I got to do again, because I think he's still a fixture of what this team could do this season.
So. I do want to throw into, and this just kind of brings it full circle to the whole player option versus mid-level exception thing. Obviously, you could hear my bias in talking about that of what stands out to me there, and probably the path I would want to pursue, all things equal. But there is an argument to be made that they don't need to bring in a mid-level exception guy with, Naz and Nikhil and the mid-level exception guy, because they got their mid-level exception guys waiting in the wings in Josh Minot, waiting for a bigger role. Terrence Shannon Jr., who you just used a first-round pick on, and Rob Dillingham, who you just used a first-round pick on. Mm-hmm. So if they choose the Randle path, Randle opt in and only one of Naz and Nikhil, it's a sign of belief in those other guys coming to backfill behind them. And we don't think one of Rob Dillingham, Josh Minot, and Terrence Shannon Jr. are going to like hit. I think so. I mean, I think that is a safe bet, right? Very safe bet that one of them hit and become at least their whatever a reasonable expected value for them is, or exceeding that. Those guys are waiting in the wings, and unfortunately, there's not rotation space to be able to play them. There's a whole like separate thing. I was watching the last Grizzlies game and how they just had like 7 of their best players like hurt. Something like, knock on wood or whatever, but the Wolves' health for the last year and a half is nuts. comparatively.
They're the
when you
healthiest
turn
team
on
in the
other-
league this year. Like there was like a tweet that was out that did all that. Like the Minnesota Timberwolves are the healthiest team, have had the least amount of missed games due to injury this season.
And even if that stat goes, Kyle, that can be influenced by you're right, but like that could be influenced by like one player being out for the season. That they got like throw on 40 right there. I would just say like a good test for it is turn on League Pass, turn on a game, and they go up for the jump ball and pause it and look who the starters are and ask yourself, wait a minute. That's that team's 5 best players. It's not, because so many teams, even above them in the standings, we'll see Memphis on Saturday next up. Like these teams are Dallas. Dallas has no point guards. They're starting Clay at the 1. Like so again, I'm not hoping or banking on injury, but like just statistically, right? Like an opportunity is going to come for one of those guys too to be able to play more, or you have the healthiest season of all time and you're the Kings from 2 years ago and like take a hot deck, right? But
love that analogy.
So
Terrence Jr., by the way, is if he does get to play in more G League games and you do tune in to watch, like I actually watched last night's like highlights of it. I want to see him continue to take those.
Watch that.
I want to see. That was so great.
I did it, so I get him. Yeah.
I want to see him continue to get catch and shoot threes though, because I'm a huge Terrence Jr. fan. We got to talk to him a little bit and hang out with him a little bit in Vegas and just like get to know him. It's still to me like I think he's like backup Ant in the sense of, I mean, he does like he's in transition last night, like split 2 defenders just to get to the rim. Yeah. His ability to get to the rim is NBA level already to me. But if he were to get some minutes on this team and Ant's out
be
there,
able to hit corner threes, yeah,
he has to space the floor. He can't do the thing where he catches in a spaced floor and then drives to the rim, because
I think he'd feel like Randle from a spacing standpoint now.
Oh yeah. But
again, where it's like he could shoot them, but like you're not like I would rather have you be getting towards the basket.
And it's a good problem to have. It's a good problem to have, man. Like there's a lot of young guys that some of us are getting tired of waiting on. I think Leonard Miller's probably tired of waiting on it too, but that's a good problem to have, right? The coffers aren't empty. We'll see what happens with this fork in the road moment. The last thing I had, just because, again, it's the weekend, and in case anyone just needs to pick me up, where I work and what I do for a living and stuff, that little moment after, I think it was maybe the Pelicans game or whatever, where Ant met that kid who has cancer and wears the bracelet and says, I'm going to wear that for the rest of my life. And they're undefeated since then. I know I said they're undefeated since they had the new handshake, which my wife and I do. But that moment's cool because salary cap and all that stuff is really fun for a lot of people, but to me, it's just about that. Like, that is what it is. And that kids with cancer, man, I don't think we'd think enough about them. So for Ant to give that kid that moment, and for Luka to give Ant that moment is really, really cool. So go check that out. The Wolves posted on all their socials. But shout out to Luka and everything he's going through.
No, thank you. Thank you for bringing that up. And thank you for going long. We did go over 90 minutes today.
Damn it.
And just
the show is also sponsored by. Wait, we got
no, we're done. I know we went a long time on the salary cap there, and it's always about trying to find a balance of when to do the salary cap stuff versus the game, and we talked a lot about certain games versus other ones. I just felt like this was a good one to do the salary cap thing, but I hope we still got enough of the Orlando game in there. We'll also, we can have more of an extended conversation with Jace about these last few games on Monday as well. That's what's coming up next, because the Wolves play the Grizzlies on Saturday night, and then on Monday morning, Jace and I will record before I'm sure just that Wolves Wizards game on Monday night is just going to get great reviews or great viewership. Can you who's going to watch the Wolves Wizards when the Vikings and Rams game is on? Like, that's you are.
It's 2025, man. We got multiple screens.
I will be as well. So you could listen to the pod, and we'll be talking about it throughout the week.
No, I mean that. But again, the schedule talk. Like, I'm actually excited because again, they played a mixture of good and feisty and stars returning, but they also played bad teams. Like, I don't know, Clippers aren't as good as what other people think in my mind. But that Memphis team. I think Jim Pete said this last night. They haven't played John Morant since 2023 because of his injuries or suspensions, all that stuff. So you're getting a glimpse of that team that kind of was your first real enemy in the league when the Wolves leveled up. And then the Wizards game, I'm done trying to Someone texted me the other day, like, the Wolves are good now. They don't play in Portland again, do they? I was like, that's a good joke. So I don't really know what to expect from Wolves Wizards, but it's we're in it now. And again, you have something on the calendar for February 6th. That's a big point. Again, this ownership thing, which I want to be done talking about, but that's going to be another big point, probably sometime this month or early next month. And it's just it's not any less entertaining. If anything, it's really heightened now, and we'll see how far the Vikings go. But it's going to be Timberwolves season real soon. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, again, I appreciate you doing it, Kyle. You guys can all follow Kyle on Twitter at Kyle Theige. And sorry, next up for us will be Jace on Monday morning. We'll talk about that Grizzlies game. I'm actually looking forward to them having some guys back healthy and having that be a test game of some of the stuff I was talking about that I know probably sounded negative or nitpicky or whatever, of Rudy against these type of centers or Randle against these type of wings or Dante, I think part of me is hungry for seeing the Wolves play well against a good team so I can better understand my own understanding of what their ceiling is. Because if I just look at what they look like in those difficult matchups right now, it's hard for me to put a high ceiling on them. But this is a new version of Ant. This feels like a changing of the tide with the team and the starting lineup thing. What can you show me this week against the Grizzlies? You got the Knicks on Friday. I don't remember the middle, the Wizards, I guess. But you got that Grizzlies game on Saturday, and within that kind of 7-day range, you also play New York and Cleveland. I'm going to learn a lot about this team this week, and I'm excited to continue talking about it. Next up, again, will be Jace on Monday. We'll talk about that Grizzlies game. Until then, he's Kyle. I'm Dane. Thanks for listening. Peace out.
How I'm feeling, man, I hope it never stop, yeah. Green and hot so you can find me in the crowd, yeah. Don't let standards ever bring you down, yeah.